Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Current. This is the North Central Region Water Network's Speed Networking webinar series. The North Central Region Water Network, for those of you that haven't joined us before, is an extension-led collaboration among land-grant universities in 12 Midwestern states working to build capacity for effective decision-making on water-related issues. My name is Rebecca Power. I'm Director of the North Central Region Water Network, and I will be moderating this webinar. The purpose of The Current is to bring you university extension programming and extension-ready research or outreach-ready research that we hope will be useful to you in your own work. This is the 12th in our webinar series, and our topic today is linking citizen water quality monitoring to extension educational programs. I want to thank Chris Stepanek and Peggy Compton for their help in organizing today's session. I'm sure you all enjoy. We have a great set of speakers doing spectacular work across the region, and glad we could bring you more information about their work. You'll see a few tips here for a smooth experience on this first slide. We have a small enough group today that we may ask you to respond or clarify a question. So if you anticipate that happening, you can run the audio setup wizard. The audio setup icon is at the top, close to the left-hand side of your screen. But we do ask initially that you submit your questions for the presenters via the chat box, which should be on the lower left-hand side of your screen, and we'll prompt you to ask you questions throughout the webinar. We will save those questions for the end when we'll have a dedicated Q&A session. And if you need to speak, please raise your hand. There's going to be a talk, an icon for you to raise your hand, which is in the middle left of your screen, and you'll need to press the talk button for us to be able to hear you. That said, I want to welcome our speakers for today, Matt Young from Illinois RiverWatch, Peggy Doty from the University of Illinois Extension, and Ilana Haimes from the University of Wisconsin. And we'll introduce them all in more detail coming up here in a minute. So we'll start with Matt. Matthew is the RiverWatch biologist for the National Great Rivers Research and Education Center in Alton, Illinois. He started his position in 2013. RiverWatch is a statewide citizen science program for adults focusing on monitoring the water quality of wadable streams. Matthew also coordinates Stream Discovery, a statewide educational stream monitoring program for grades 5 to 12. Matthew received his bachelor's degree in Fisheries and Wildlife Biology from Arkansas Tech University in 2010 and a master's degree in Zoology from Southern Illinois University in Carbondale in 2012 with an emphasis on river ecology. So welcome, Matthew, and take it away.
Thanks, Rebecca. Like Rebecca said, my name is Matt. I coordinate the Illinois RiverWatch program. And we're going to start with a poll today about what is your level of knowledge of citizen monitoring. So volunteers or citizens collecting scientific data. We can go ahead and start with this poll. A great deal, B, some, C, a little, or D, none. So you can go ahead and select your answers there at the top, at the left middle section. You see a little drop-down menu where you can select A, B, C, or D. We'll just give everyone a few seconds to enter their poll selections. So far, we have a majority of our participants today have some knowledge of citizen monitoring, so that's great. So you'll be familiar with a lot of the things we talk about today. And then I'll try to add some more detail from my experience as the RiverWatch coordinator in Illinois. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So Our first part of this presentation today is called an overview of citizen monitoring. So we're going to start with kind of how it came about and what its purposes have been and how it's being used today. So what is citizen science? It's an engagement of non-professionals in scientific data collection. You can have all kinds of people participate in citizen science. It can be students, it can be adults, it can anywhere in between. Retired people or participate in a lot of citizen science activities. And so what citizen science does is it integrates, it's been really useful because it integrates public outreach and scientific data collection at the same time. So you're kind of accomplishing two major goals at the same time. You're increasing awareness of environmental issues, but you're also collecting good environmental data on them that can hopefully be used in the future. And citizen science also typically engages volunteers in data collection in their natural environment. So you can raise awareness for volunteers of what's around them, where they live. From my experience with RiverWatch, a lot of the volunteers sign up because they're interested in streams near where they live. They want to know how they're doing, if there's anything that can be done to help them or improve them. And this is a valuable tool because a lot of people, they don't know what's in the streams near them. They've never been in them. Most of the time, people only notice a stream if they're driving over a bridge on the way to work. And especially in Illinois, where most of a heavily agricultural state, streams are a unique part of the landscape because it's the last part of the landscape that's still hidden by trees and brush and things like that. So unless you're really looking, you may not notice the streams near you or how they're doing or what's in them. So kind of a little bit of history of citizen science in the United States. First citizen science was in the late 19th century, National Weather Service. Just basic weather data was collected by volunteers. Since then, we've had phenological records, so that animal and plant life cycles have been collected and noted. And then after that, Audubon Society, Christmas bird count, probably one of the most famous citizen science programs that happens at the beginning of winter of every year. And then we have, in 1922, the Isaac Walton League was organized, and they've kind of been one of the first programs to really promote citizen science. So, and that kind of played out beginning in the 60s as chemical monitoring became more common. And then in 1976 was the first year for biological monitoring, and that was Maryland Save Our Streams in partnership with their DNR. And I was doing a little bit of reading about that, and it just started out very simple. They collected the EPT data, so if anyone's familiar with biological monitoring, that's the mayflies, stoneflies, and caddisflies. And so the first program, if you had all three of those kinds, you had excellent water quality. And if you only had two, it was, I think it was fair, and then only one is poor. So starting out very simple, and then moving on from there. And then after the first biological program and the first chemical programs were started in the 60s and 70s, kind of move on to closer to today. So there's been rapid growth since the 70s with number of people involved and how relevant the data collected is for regulatory decision making. So one of the program you may be familiar with is the Citizen Science Association, and so they actually have a website, citsci.org, that anyone can go to and either start a citizen science project or check on citizen science projects that are going on right now. And right now the top 5 projects that are going on there are urban tree monitoring, shale gas drilling impacts on water resources, invasive tamarisk shrub mapping, urban bird biodiversity, and pika distribution. So those are the top 5 projects, just kind of give you an overview of the diversity of projects that have sprung up and that are going on across the United States. So involvement has really nearly tripled in the early 90s, and then through the 90s over 500,000 new groups with varying environmental and social contexts. So this is not, this includes all citizen science, not just water quality. So a lot of diverse projects within citizen science. If you Google citizen science, you get nearly 49 million hits. So there's a lot of resources out there about citizen science. So we've kind of talked about citizen science broadly. Talk a little bit about water quality uses. So on this slide, we talk about the relevance to policy and decision making. So what is water quality data used for usually? A lot of programs have the goal to have water quality data used to list or delist impaired waters. So the Clean Water Act designates waters as impaired or unimpaired, depending on if they meet designated uses. And so depending on the quality of the data collected, some volunteer data can be used to actually list a water body as impaired, and then actually kind of get the ball rolling with watershed plans and programs to improve that water body. And then other than listing impaired waters, water quality data, volunteer data is also used to screen sites, and flag sites, which sites need more attention by professional scientists or watershed groups. And also for stream restoration projects, volunteers are often called upon to monitor the impacts on water quality of different restoration projects. And then baseline data. If a lot of researchers, when they're starting a study, they look for data from the past, and volunteer data is often the easiest place to go for that. So if you look at the spread of volunteer water monitoring programs across the country, you see that there's a pretty good aggregation in the Midwest and especially the Northeast, where this is where it originally started, and in Maryland. And then we have a few out west. All told, according to the National Water Quality Monitoring Council, 2014 says that there's 1,720 water quality monitoring programs in the United States. So that equates to there's at least one program, I think, in just about every state. Whichever state you live in, there's something going on, whether it's stream monitoring, lake monitoring, wetland monitoring. Those would go into the surface water monitoring, and there's also some states have well monitoring. So all kinds of water quality monitoring across the United States. So why use citizen science data? Data needed on streams impaired by non-point and point source pollution. So monitoring point source pollution is a little bit more simple. You know where the pollution's coming from, but to actually detect non-point source pollution, which is pollution that comes off the landscape at large, you're going to need a larger geographical coverage by your monitoring. And this is where volunteers really come in. And with non-point source pollution problems, of course, it's imperative to involve the public in these issues because they cannot be solved generally by just agencies or professional organizations. It's just too large of a problem. Another issue that we've run into, especially in recent years, is reduced budgets for water quality monitoring. It's actually pretty expensive to do water quality monitoring, especially good chemical monitoring. And so some states and professional agencies are relying more on volunteer water quality monitors to fulfill their monitoring needs. These days we now have methods and training have improved for volunteer monitors, which equates to more reliable data. So actually, in I think it was 1996, the US EPA came out with the volunteer water quality monitoring method, just a standardized method that anyone can use across the United States for water quality monitoring. And they've also come out with a standardized quality assurance project plan that volunteers can use. So just some great standardized procedures. Another good thing about citizen science data is it values working with the public. So like I say, with these non-point source pollution problems, the more of the public you can involve, the better off, and the more likely you are to solve these problems. Go ahead and take a look at my last slide here. This is the regional programs here within the North Central Region Water Network. These are just a few, some of my partners that I've worked with, and so you can take a look at that and see if there's anything there that you might be familiar with. And we have a few spots here on the right, the data where the data is located. So we'd love to have anyone who's interested come and look at our data and hopefully use it to solve water quality issues. And I think that wraps it up. We'll go to our poll question. Did you know there may be volunteer collected water quality data available for your local area? And you can participate in this poll by clicking on the left middle side. You'll see a little checkbox and you can select yes or no. Give a few more seconds for everyone to participate. All right, it's looking like the group we have today is a very familiar, let's see, we have 14 responses, and did know that there's water quality monitoring data, volunteer data available, and 0 responses that they didn't know. So the group today we have is very knowledgeable that this is available.
Matt, I'm just going to interrupt for a second. I'm just going to interrupt for a second and say that just to remind people that the place to participate in the poll is in the left central part of your screen. Okay, we've shifted over now to the different poll, but you'll see an A showing up there, and that A will have a drop-down menu where you can participate in the poll. Thanks.
Yep, that's right. Poll's on the left side, like Rebecca said. So our second poll question here, how comfortable would you be using volunteer collected water quality data in your outreach efforts? A is very comfortable, B somewhat comfortable, C somewhat uncomfortable, and then the last is very uncomfortable. You can go ahead and select some of those, select those responses, and we'll give you a few more seconds to finish that up. Again, find there's a little square with a letter on it on the left middle of your screen. Click the drop-down menu and select your choice.
Hi, this is Janice. I'm the moderator, and I'll just give another description to see if that helps people find it. It's in the participant block, so that's the box where our names are listed, and then above that you should see 4 icons, one of them being an A in a box. And when you hover over that, then you'll see the poll options, or I believe maybe you have to click on it. Hope that helps.
So we've got 14 participants in this poll so far. As you can see on your screen now, we have 6 responses are very comfortable using volunteer data. 8 participants are somewhat comfortable. We haven't had any that are uncomfortable yet. So at least with our participants we have today, we have a familiarity with volunteer data, and we know at least some of the methods that go into it and how trustworthy the data can possibly be. So we have a few more responses coming in there. So, all right. So the next presentation will begin shortly. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and submit them in the chat box.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks, Janice, for that additional guidance and figuring out how to find that poll. It doesn't pop up like it does in some systems. You got to go and find it in your toolbox. So we'll move to our next presenter, and that would be Peggy Doty. Peggy is an educator for the University of Illinois Extension, specializing in environmental education as a means to relate wildlife related issues and water quality to all ages. She holds a bachelor's degree in zoology with a focus on wildlife management. Peggy also has a master's degree in education with a specialization in outdoor teacher education in curriculum and instruction. Peggy feels water quality and quantity need to be addressed continually from as many different avenues as possible in order to preserve our water supplies and participate in creating healthy rivers and streams. She's been teaching environmental education for 20 years and is passionate about teaching people of all ages about their environment and helping people understand its relationship to their lives. Wow, Peggy, I want you on my team, and so glad you're here. So take it away.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, and the North Central Region Water Network for making this effort possible for this working group that's here today. Good afternoon to everyone else. Thanks for being on this afternoon. My portion of this webinar is more to share some of the water quality programming being accomplished in the 5 states represented in our working group. Those states would include Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. So kind of a small piece to the North Central region. The next few slides are just snippets. There's no way we can include everything in my 10-minute section, but we wanted somewhat of an overview, what you would find happening in each of these states as it relates to water quality, and it might be the same things happening where you are. So we'll start with University of Illinois Extension because that's what I'm most aware of. We do things, and you're going to see some repeating going on, which is what we wanted to see for this particular project. We have annual soil management workshops, often involving concepts with water quality. U of I also offers a series of statewide certified livestock manager trainings. Extension also partners, we have an Illinois water survey under the auspices, our umbrella of Extension, and we're starting to do a lot and see a lot more with private well education and testing, which is one of my particularly favorite areas. And then I and 2 other of my team members in the state of Illinois do pond ecology. And a lot of that nowadays will relate to the nutrients and how to maintain a pond health and fish health with nutrients being involved in our strong agricultural environment. We do have youth education components. I do a week-long river camp in which we study the Kishwaukee River and we get the kids in the water and we start working on their young citizen science abilities. Some of us are involved in conservation days and ag awareness, and we tend to focus on water quality and soil health as it relates that way. We also have regional activities. For instance, we have Clean Water Celebration in Peoria, which reaches way out to the youth in that area and serves many different economic levels of youth and gets them involved in some of this water activity that they wouldn't have access to. And then we use volunteers. We use our certified master naturalists to do citizen scientist efforts and collect data, which I think the important thing as we look at volunteers is the fact that we have to make sure people understand they're trained and they are given a complete training and their information they collect is accurate and well done. So we're going to move quickly here to South Dakota. They also cover environmental training in their area, in their state, and especially on the concentrated animal feeding operations. So animal feeding operations that meet AFOs, the animal feeding plus more. The water quality education for them, it relates with their soil management activities in the state. And they also have a youth component and focus more on 3rd and 4th graders at water events, festivals, activities such as that where they reach out. So University of Missouri Extension, this information came from Bob Brose at Missouri. He sent me a long list, and as with all of our work, some programs are in direct relationship to water nutrient education, while others are a portion of the programming and or indirectly related. So as it is with Missouri, the directly related programs would include, but they're not limited to, their promote profitability, which is where they're stressing that you're putting on these nutrients, you're paying for them, let's keep them there and not send them downriver. They have a precision agriculture and variable application of nutrients program, which the first part there relies on data maps and yield maps to determine area of field where production capabilities are at their greatest, and using variable rate technology to apply more fertilizer where it's needed, or I'd like to say less where it's not needed, I think. And the second program of that, the variable application, actually uses color sensing technology. So this is using really great data to help ensure that our farmland managers are able to keep their nutrients where they belong. And of course, manure management. We all know the criticalness of that. They also have programs such as field trials projects, cover crop days. Any of those might have a relationship to water runoff and nutrient loss. They also carry youth education, including water resources and natural resource education. And then you see, as on Matt's slide, and Matt's slide had this listed, their Lakes of Missouri volunteer program. So here you have that volunteer component popping up once again. The Iowa State University Extension and Outreach Water Programming, as Rebecca said when she was being so kind about me, I want to move to Iowa. They're doing everything. This is a great list, and as you can see the examples of their delivery coverage as well as certifications. You've got crop, you've got, Jamie sent this over. You can see the trends starting. You've got the crop nutrient and soil management, there's your manure management and feedlot, same thing. Natural resource and ecology efforts. They've got riparian buffer initiatives, fisheries focuses, performance-based watershed management. All of this, every piece of this is related to what we're after, which is water quality in our watersheds all the way through our states. As well as they do have a youth education component. Their Water Rocks is the title of theirs. And she's actually working with Illinois now and I want to say maybe South Dakota after this little working group we had. And we're trying to help them expand that and do a partnership amongst our states, which is exactly, I think, and Rebecca would probably agree, that's what we're trying to do, and that's what she's trying to do with this North Central region, is to get us all helping each other and participating in making one mass of information and education. The next slide that Jamie had sent me broke it down, and this was kind of nice because you can see there's, and typical for all of our states, we've got state and regional and local efforts, all of which need to happen. Then we've got certified programs because they're required to be certified, so we can offer those as extensions and reach those people and add our additional education. And then Iowa has watershed project education and outreach, and they actually also, if needed, will do one-on-one consultation. And I think that's something where we could all do something along that line if we have the manpower, and it would really be an on-the-ground activity. And then finally, we're getting to our University of Wisconsin. The folks that pulled us all together are up there. And we can see more coverage in Wisconsin as we did in others for manure management, watershed efforts, habitat restoration, and the use of volunteers for collecting nutrient data. New to the list is the effort in wastewater treatment workshops they've been doing. And this is fantastic. This is something that's standing out. If you watched all the other slides, this is kind of standing out, and this is something I'm interested in, and I think it's great. They hosted workshops to bring together wastewater treatment plant operators, DNR wastewater regulation folk, and also the conservation technicians and not-for-profit natural resource organizations, and of course our agricultural entities, because they need to be involved in most of these things. The workshops were meant to start conversation between point source and non-point source groups and people that have access, and make sure those things are, reached to others, reached out, the outreach education. And then they held workshops on a watershed scale, because the trading and adaptive management options are implemented there on a watershed scale. So this is kind of a major, this is a snippet, as I said, of everything going on in our states. And then finally, let me see where I put that. Okay, so I've got a million pieces of paper flying around, and I believe that'll be, yeah. So hang on to this poll thought for just a second while you're looking to make sure you know where to go to your box. Let me wrap this up. So you can see a general trend of water quality as it relates, but it's not limited to livestock management, crop and soil management. It's as a natural resource issue for fish, wildlife, and habitats. Those habitats are those riparian efforts and those watershed efforts. Youth education. Youth education is important because we are responsible for this. We don't have to make people love everything about natural resources, but we are charged with helping them understand it. And that's much easier if we reach them as young community members. And that's where they're going to grow up and be a part of this. Whether they do any other job, they'll be better community members if they understand all this natural resource issues, and especially water quantity and quality as they age. Finally, we see states utilizing some trained volunteers to collect water data. So before we move on to Ilana, in the next pulling it all together, there's another poll here for you, and it's just a yes or no. So if you go up and hover under participants, under your person right there, and you see that not quite smiley face, everybody calls it a smiley face, he looks kind of neutral. Across from the smiley face on the far right, there's the checkbox. And if you could, do you conduct educational outreach focused on the relationship between nutrients? We just gave you a ton of possible directly related and slightly related and extended related activities. Do you do this? We're very interested in knowing. Give us a second, and then I'll turn it back to Rebecca to continue on. All right, excellent. Answers coming in, and hopefully we'll be able to take these answers and work that more into our next step with our personal working group. I'm excited to be a part of this, and thank you all for listening and getting on and being interested in what's being done.
Great, thank you, Peggy, and you did a great job setting the stage for how these things are all interconnected. And the importance for us as extension folks and other folks I can see here on our list of participants, you know, we need to weave it all together because the people that we're working with are asking us to do that. So we're going to move on to Ilana Haimes, and she's going to tell us a little bit about some data collection that this group did, some assessment to see what the needs were moving forward. Ilana's been working with the North Central Region Water Network as a program assistant, developing and analyzing a survey regarding nutrients and water quality education in this 5-state region. Prior to this project, she worked as a student assistant to the Wisconsin Citizen Science Stream Monitoring Program, Water Action Volunteers. She's a recent graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. And thanks, Ilana, and go for it.
Hello. So I want to talk about the survey that our group sent out to nutrient educators in the 5-state region in order to understand what educators' nutrient-related water quality outreach looks like, or what it doesn't look like in the cases where it doesn't exist yet. In total, the survey had 23 questions, and what we're going to look at today is just a sampling of the questions related to target audiences and data usage. The survey was sent to people using a direct email link and to a few listservs, and in total we got 539 people surveyed, and 354 of those people responded. Most often the responders are representative of universities, state governments, NGOs, and grade school educators. So one of the first questions that was asked on the survey was, in which state do you work? As you can see, the majority of the survey takers are from Illinois. And for this question and all the questions to follow, the data shown will include the responses from those who were surveyed using that direct survey link and those surveyed using anonymous links. The 1% of people who provided no response to this question are assumed to be retired based on responses to further questions. And we can also see from this graph that the number of people that responded for South Dakota and Missouri is fairly low. So some of the state-by-state data has very high or very low percentages for those two states because the sample size was so small. So then after asking in which state survey takers worked, we asked them who their target audience was for nutrient-related water quality outreach. And this question was asked before the survey takers were asked whether or not they conduct this type of educational outreach. And the intention of this question is to gauge the potential range of audiences that can be reached through this type of outreach. That is, the overall purpose of the survey was not only to understand the current nutrient educators' needs, but also the needs of those who wish to conduct this type of educational outreach and are not yet doing so. In this way we can assess the barriers to these people conducting outreach and try to overcome them. This figure is organized with the greatest percentage of responses at the left and the fewer responses at the right, and some of the responses that fell into the other category for target audiences would include the federal government, the county government, and quite a few soil and water conservation districts. So moving on from this question, we then asked whether or not survey takers actually conduct this type of educational outreach focused on the relationship between nutrients and water quality. And you can see on the left-hand side of this slide the numbers per state, which kind of equates to the first pie chart that we looked at. The numbers here were overwhelmingly positive. The majority of the survey takers do conduct educational outreach focused on the relationship between nutrients and water quality. And those who answered no to this question were then directed to this following question. If not, would they like to begin conducting this type of outreach? In total, we had 85 people answer no to the first question and be directed to this question. And here again, we had a majority of positive responses. 40 people responded that they would not like to conduct educational outreach, and those people were directed to the end of the survey. In this way, we continued with people who already conduct educational outreach and those who would also like to begin doing so. After the introductory sections of the survey, there was a section discussing data usage by by nutrient and water quality educators. So one of the first questions in this section asked these educators whether or not they use water quality data in their outreach efforts. And again, we had a fairly positive response. Those 9% of people, I believe it was 24 people that said no, were then asked to provide a written response explaining what prevents them from using water quality data. And the three bulleted responses that you see on the screen right now are kind of a summary of the most common responses and those responses that were repeated from state to state. Again, those people who answered that they do use water quality data in their outreach efforts were then asked if they knew that there might be volunteer collected water data available for their local area. And here the responses were also fairly positive. The majority of people did know that volunteer collected data might be available for their area. This same group of people was then asked if they would consider using this volunteer collected water quality data that they either previously or now know exists in their outreach efforts. And 90% of the people did say yes, that they would consider using this volunteer collected data in their educational programs. Only 10% said no. So those 13 people were again asked to provide a written response explaining why they would be opposed to using this type of data. And what you see again on the right side of the screen includes the written responses, a summary of the written responses based on those that were most common and those that recurred from state to state, including quality issues and people being unsure that the methods that were being used were constant and were valid and accurate. This is the final question from the survey that we're going to look at. If you're interested in seeing the full results of the survey, they are on the North Central Region Water Network webpage under Network Initiatives and Volunteer Nutrient Monitoring. And with that, I think we can move on to the answering of questions and the discussion questions.
Great, Ilana, thank you. And thanks to this entire team. I think, you know, we've, for a number of years now, we've been delving into our specific areas of expertise and really developing our craft in nutrient management and citizen monitoring, and this team, both in their states and across the North Central region, has really been working, as you can see, to figure out where additional connections need to be made and how to get those connections made in the most effective way possible. So thanks so much for all your work. And we have some questions that have accumulated here in the chat box, so I'm going to go back up and begin to go through those. And if anyone else has questions, please, again, feel free to submit them and we'll get to them toward the bottom. So I had an initial question about the map that Matt had presented, and Chris was gracious enough to answer. So there were, if you remember, there were a couple of different types of monitoring programs on Matt's map. I don't think we'll go back to that slide, but Chris says here that the green diamonds, if you go back and look at that presentation later on, are sub-programs, volunteer water quality monitoring programs. Thank you very much. If that was Janice, thank you. So you can see here that the programs and the green diamonds are sub-programs represented there. Okay, moving down the list. Debbie from Northern Indiana asks, is there information available on starting a private well health program in my area? Can any of our speakers answer that question?
Where was Debbie from again?
Northern Indiana.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
You know
about
something, this is Peggy. Debbie, what you might be able to do is contact the Illinois Water Survey in Champaign, Illinois, because I assume they would have their finger on the pulse of other states doing that kind of effort. I don't have it right in front of me, but if you went on the internet and put in Illinois Water Survey, that would be the first place I would start if I wanted to move states and take, you know, that idea with me.
Hey, this is Peggy Compton. We have a super well put together private well owner education program here in Wisconsin, and I will type my email address in, and Debbie, if you want to contact me, I could send you some links to people and internet sites that if you wanted to see what we're doing, and also Kevin Masaryk, our UW Extension drinking water, groundwater specialist. I'm sure he's pretty well versed in what's going on in the upper Midwest, so he may have some contacts for you.
Thank you to the Peggy's, and thank you to Matt. Next, Nancy Sheehan has a question. I would like to hear more about environmental education for confined animal feeding operations. And I think that was on, I think that was the Iowa Extension slide where that first came up, or maybe
it was South Dakota.
And was this? Oh, okay, thank you. So she's wondering if that was for the operators or youth or both.
I believe it was operators, but South Dakota would be the person to contact. But I was led to believe by, you know, everybody gave me their information, and I was led to believe it's similar to our certified livestock management, where they have to get certified, you know, each year or so many years when they have a certain number of animals per space, per area, etc. I'm under the impression it was adults. Not that you couldn't take that information and create it into some ag education, like an ag in the classroom kind of thing, but in this case for South Dakota, I believe it's strictly for operators.
Okay, thank you. And Nancy, you can see the person's name up there, Anthony Bly, for you to contact with more information. And Lois Wolfson's asking for Ilana, with the question on if people would use volunteer data, how many were from state agencies or government agencies? And Ilana, make sure to push the talk button so we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to push that button. So from state agencies, I can pull from state government. We had 21 responders say that they would consider using volunteer collected water quality data in their outreach efforts, and only one responder from a state agency saying no, that they would not consider using volunteer collected water data in their outreach efforts.
Okay, thank you. And I just noticed Erin Cordes, who's the new North Central Region State Point of Contact for South Dakota. She has clarified that the CAFO training program in South Dakota is for operators and that the public is welcome to attend. And Lois is asking a follow-up question for Ilana, asking if we know if they would use the volunteer monitoring data in their regulatory efforts.
I am unsure about that. That was not included in our survey.
This is Matt here. I might be able to help a little bit with that. So as far as state agencies use, in that case, the volunteer nutrient data for regulatory efforts, used for some parts of their programs, they will. So a lot of state programs will have several tiers to their program. So they'll have an entry level where volunteers collect basic water quality data. And then you may have a high or advanced tier where volunteers undergo very rigorous training and quality assurance training. And that data would then be used for the actual direct regulation of listing waters as impaired or unimpaired. And data of the highest quality volunteer data is typically there's not as many volunteers in those programs as in the lower tier programs, but those volunteers in those highest tiers, they do submit data to state agencies that can be used directly for assessing a water body as impaired or unimpaired.
Okay, other questions for our presenters? Well, I have one. So what do you all see as the next steps here? So you have some great information about strengths and potential gaps, needs. You know, what do you see as the next steps in linking our capacity for citizen monitoring in the region with our nutrient management education and nutrient management activities in general?
This is Matt here. I think one of the benefits of our project here is was linking. Basically, our project that we did for North Central Region was linking extension outreach with volunteer monitoring, and so I think using volunteer monitoring as a way to actually reach landowners and resource managers, I think, can really be increased by connecting to extension. And so we just have a broader coverage for volunteer monitoring. And of course, getting to work together as a team with multiple states, extension educators in multiple states, and volunteer coordinators in multiple states, we can kind of, we're not siloed, where we can see what each other is doing and see opportunities for moving forward in the future. And Peggy, or Peggy, did you have anything else to add to that?
You know, I think what Matt says is exactly right, and I think the idea of we're all doing the same thing and we actually act like there's lines between our states, physical stopping blocks, and I think we need to work more as a mass. And I think the idea when we started this was a hope that not only using our trained citizen scientists to get more manpower on the ground, but to be able to collect that data in a data bank. So if I'm in South Dakota, or I'm in Missouri, or Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, or anywhere along this 1/3 of our United States watershed, which is the Mississippi, I can go into that database and say, oh, I can see where the hot spots are. Now let's go and do some next level checking and see what's going on. And educating everyone. We educate ourselves really well, but we need our respective communities to understand, not love necessarily, but understand why we do these things. We aren't just passionate about it, we're concerned. And the reason they should be concerned are A, B, and C. And there are people that are trained to help us find that. We can't do it all by ourselves. But the people that Matt and all these other folks are training are highly intelligent people who are very qualified to get us data. And if we're, if we start seeing something, we can go check whether it's non-point or point source pollution, or it's helping our farmers keep their money in their pocket and then making that work for the bigger picture. I believe anytime we can partner and tie all this together and make a one-stop shop out of it, it makes more sense. That was my soapbox. Thank you.
So I think this is a discussion question that you all preloaded, right?
Yeah, those were there in case we were looking for some more, information from people, or we had time. We just want to keep doing more, Rebecca. But
well,
they could.
I have a question. Try to drill down a little bit more specifically related to some of our extension specialists and educators that work on nutrient management. Did you make additional connections there, or have any specific things that came up, specific linkages that came up between those specialists and what you all are doing with citizen monitoring? Or can you say anything more about that? I'm just, that was one of the things I was really excited about. One of the things that I was excited about this project is saying, hey, can these different areas of expertise that we have in extension really, can we support one another? And I was curious if any ideas came up in that regard.
This is Peggy again, and then Matt, feel free to jump in. I think from my perspective, what I found out myself was that even within states, we tend to take on or manage something or put together a program, and we're so busy with all the things we have, especially for states. In the case of Illinois, we've reorganized, and I have 3 times what I had for coverage. But I'm noticing that when it first came up, I didn't know if we were doing anything. I'm not personally doing it at that level, so I had to actually go through and figure out what my state was doing. So in order to partner and cross paths, it's the perfect vector. We are educators. We have at least a foundation in this information, whether we're specializing in it or not. So I think if we can make sure our states are all aware of what we're doing in the process of this, and then as I put these slides together, it was like, okay, there's the manure management again, there's the soil and water workshops and management, there's the certifications again. We're all doing it, and we're not even sure individually if we're doing a different program what that is. So if nothing else, I think this is bringing together our knowledge base at the same time we're doing this project. And we can take this information and use it, and we are educators. We facilitate, we talk, and we can do that on a statewide level. Matt, what is your thoughts on that as it relates to your citizen scientists?
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely agree with all that. there is a large knowledge base out there. We often are not aware of who is doing what with regards to nutrient outreach, water quality outreach. Sometimes, or kind of what we started with on this project is we wanted to see what kind of nutrient outreach was actually going on in the Midwest. And so that's the first thing we looked at. And the good thing about researching who is doing what is that the projects and programs that a lot of us would like to implement are actually being done already, and whether in your own state or by a different state's outreach or extension programs. So if we can work together across state lines, I think we will. I think we'll be more efficient in our nutrient education and outreach. We won't have to start from scratch and figure out who our target audience is, what's the best methods for doing nutrient outreach, or the best methods for monitoring with volunteers. So I think definitely if we're aware of what we are doing across state boundaries and between extension and volunteer monitoring, we will increase our efficiency for the water quality education and outreach.
And make sure you look in the chat, because Chris is I'm sure she's like, oh, she wants to be able to talk and she has to type. Hi, Chris. We did develop logic models. We went through a real rigorous day-and-a-half meeting where we worked through all those things to figure out what people needed and wanted, and the hope that we would be linking a database to some kind of portal where people could access it, and then the extension professionals could then, in a consistent manner across states, deliver that as a tool and a package, and then possibly even a physical tool kit for our farm management situations.
Perfect. Great. And Nancy has a comment here, Nancy Sheehan from Wisconsin. We've had some success using citizen stream monitors in an adaptive management project here in the Madison area. That's adaptive watershed management as part of our Wisconsin state statutes. Kind of similar, has some similarities to water quality trading, but also different in some ways. However, we in the nonprofit world and our volunteers still have problems communicating results across agencies. Funding is often lacking to support outreach and education. So there's a need that Nancy is identifying. So I know you all had some discussion questions. Is there anything that you want to, our presenters, is there any information that you would like to gather from our participants here before we end? We've got about 3 minutes left in the webinar.
I don't know, Ilana, do you have anything on your end with the survey that we could use more information on?
I can talk about the final question with the possibility of the deliverables, if you guys would like.
Pick our most important one.
Actually, I want to mention that somewhere in the report, about halfway through the report that is, again, posted on the North Central Region website, there are a few pages listing links to helpful resources for nutrient and water quality outreach education, and to which states these resources apply. So if you're looking for any websites to help with that, I would recommend looking in the report. All of the sources are hyperlinked.
Great. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And there's we'll be posting the rest of the results from this project in the next few months or so, but for now it's a treasure trove of information in that report. Going back here through the discussion questions. All right. We have, actually, even though it's not uploaded there, we have our next webinar is coming up on October 21st at 2 p.m. Central, same time. and the topic will be farmer leadership in watershed management. We've got a great suite of presenters there. I think you'll all enjoy that, that webinar as well. And we thank you so much for joining today, and thanks again to our presenters for their great work on the project and for their presentation. And that concludes